presence is here. We're here to launch our PhD in Applied Ethics. This has been a long time in the making, and it's one of the School of Humanities very prized, um, very prized programs because it really speaks into the heart and the values of who we are at Strathmore University. And so we're so happy that we're able to launch it. And we're hoping if you're interested, please join us. Dr. Branya has promised it's going to be an exciting program. Yes, Dr. Branya? And, and it's a program in which really and truly when we are speaking to him, you can really research on anything that has to do with ethics, from something within your society. AI has become a big, big thing. So I am a potential student and really thinking about, yeah, should I talk about AI and ethics? What are the ethics of AI? And these are the kind of problems we want to be looking at as we really try and gather knowledge about the place of ethics in our society, its importance, and why it is the foundation really of who we are as human beings. So welcome again. So we're just about to start and we're waiting for our chief guest to walk in. He's actually just about to walk in right now. So as we're waiting for him, can I ask Father Manuel to give a word of prayer?
Before giving me the prayer, just to tell that rather to thank this school because I now ended being the chaplain. There's a new chaplain, Father Donatos. There's some movement in the chaplaincy. Father Donatos will be the chaplain of the school from now on. Wanted to bring him here, but he had already a previous commitment somewhere in Nairobi. Can't be here, but you know him. And with this, I also want to thank, because in the few months I was chaplain here, I was very well received and very well treated. I also thought I would do some course here. First time I came, they thought that there was a course in Swahili. So I'm interested in this. But then nobody contacted me. I don't think it's very well forever, because in these things sometimes a chaplain is not available and they call other chaplain. So somewhere, somehow I'll be here again someday. Yeah. So I would invite you to stand for our prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, source of all wisdom, truth, and goodness, we gather before you today with grateful hearts to mark the launching of this PhD in Applied Ethics within the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. We thank you for the gift of this moment, for the vision that conceived it, the dedication that shaped it, and the hope it carries for the future. Lord, you are the giver of wisdom beyond human understanding. As the Bible reminds us, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Proverbs 9 verse 10. We ask that this program be firmly rooted in that wisdom, one that does not merely inform the mind, but also forms the conscience and transforms the heart. In this prayer,
good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? Micah 6:8. Bless this School of Humanities and Social Science. May it remain a space where dialogue flourishes, where faith and reason are held in fruitful conversation, and where learning is always ordered towards service. Protect this academic community from pride, fear, and indifference, and instead fill it with curiosity, generosity, and hope. We ask all this in faith and gratitude through Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And congratulations for this new beginning. I'm going to excuse myself because I have to begin my lectures actually on next bioethics. Thank you very much.
So again, we thank Father Emmanuel for being here with us and for being our chaplain. We really have enjoyed having him with us, as well as for all of the prayers that you have prayed for our school. We have felt them, and I think this was part of our prayer requests when you joined the school. So thank you again, Father Emmanuel. Can we have a round of applause for him? So we're now ready to begin with our launch. And to give our opening remarks, I will ask Dr. Dimba, the Dean of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. Welcome, Dr. Dimba.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Our chief guest, Senior Counsel Fred Ngatia, the Vice Chancellor, Dr. Vincent Tugutu, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academics and Student Affairs, Dr. Elizabeth Gashenga, distinguished guests, colleagues, alumni, students, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is with joy that I welcome you today to the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at Strathmore University. For the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, today's launch of the Doctor of Philosophy in Applied Ethics is a moment of maturity, continuity, and fulfillment. This journey began a long time ago, and we are very glad to see that today we come to the point where we are celebrating the apex of knowledge. From its earliest years, the School of Humanities and Social Sciences has served as the custodian of Strathmore University's values proposition. This responsibility has been most visibly expressed through the common courses, namely philosophical anthropology, principles of ethics, critical thinking, social and political philosophy, and business ethics, among others, which ensure that the Strathmore graduate, regardless of discipline, encounters ethical reasoning, critical thinking, and respect for the dignity of the human person as central to their education. Strathmore University's commitment to advance ethical formation is also evident at the graduate level. Our postgraduate students also go through different ethical formation or ethics courses. Our executive education or any other course that we offer, we have to make sure that there is that aspect of critical thinking or an aspect of ethical considerations, ethical dialogue with our people. It has helped shape reflective practitioners and leaders across the diverse sectors. The launch of this PhD in applied ethics, therefore, represents a natural academic progression of a tradition that began a long time ago. The vision and the mission of Strathmore University that has been cultivated over time. This doctoral program allows the school to contribute at the highest academic level, forming scholars who will serve the society through shaping ethical discourse in their research and teaching. At Strathmore University, we align ourselves, and especially this particular course will align itself to the competency-based education. The School of Humanities and Social Sciences remains committed to ensure that value formation remains central, and the PhD in Applied Ethics embodies that commitment of the competency-based education. With that, I'd like to thank you and welcome you once again to Strathmore University. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dimba, for those opening remarks. And now we would like to hear a little bit about the program. And to do this, we'll ask Dr. Branya, who has been the champion of a lot of the philosophy courses in Strathmore University, starting from our master's and right into here, our PhD program. So welcome, Dr. Branya.
Well, today we are celebrating 16 years since we started the Masters of Applied Philosophy and Ethics, and the students are the ones who push us to start the PhD courses for applied ethics. So why do we start the course? Okay, one was the interest of those who did the Masters in Applied Philosophy and Ethics, but also because there are now 83 different universities in Kenya, and they need professors, and they need professors in ethics. So there is high demand, and the country needs it. That's one of the reasons. Now, the second reason could be a bit more interesting, politically speaking. So we are hearing talks about Singapore becoming Singapore again. And it is true, yeah, at independence, Singapore and Kenya were at par. Now Singapore is in the top of the world, first, second, in economic freedom, economic development, and actually they have nothing. They have the position only and the sea, but they don't have any natural resource other than hard work and organization. There is a famous lecturer, actually, of the business school, the Lee Kuan Yew Business School in Singapore, that he says that in 13 years that he was teaching in the business school, he discovered the secret of Singapore. And if we apply that secret, probably we will be there eventually in years to come. So he says it's very simple. It's 3 letters, acronyms in English, MPH. So N stands for meritocracy. So giving the best job to the best people. So the people who are qualified, rather than people who you know or you can trust because they are members of your family or because of political reasons. So meritocracy. The best people should get the best job, or the job that they are qualified to. And among those who are qualified, the best ones. The second one is pragmatism, MP. Pragmatism is to give, well, not to be guided by ideology, but by what works. And usually what works is not ideological. You have to have a plan. You have to see the Kenya we want, the 2030. Some people say 3020, more than 2030, but anyway, we will reach there eventually if we apply the next one, which is the H, honesty. And he says that that is the most difficult one. But the founder of the new Singapore did it very, very well. And he says, well, look, you don't punish the small people, you punish the top people. And he gave an example, somebody coming, a minister, in the country that came from holidays, and the police were waiting for him at the steps of the plane. And then he says, why are you taking me to jail? He says, well, it's very simple. You went for holidays with this businessman. This businessman paid for all your expenses. So that is bribery. So you go to jail. So when a minister, top minister, goes to jail, everybody down the line knows that business is business. So if we try to get these three things, MPH in Kenya, then it will be great. We will reach the point of Singapore because we will have more natural resources, more manpower than Singapore has. And the position we have is not bad. We have great ports, or two great ports that other countries in Africa don't have. So this is the purpose of the PhD in applied ethics. So applied ethics is basically take any problem that we have and see how we can make it better. How can we make people happy with that? But that requires the CBK approach, not the Commercial Bank of Kenya, but what the PhDs are for, which is to contribute to the body of knowledge. So anybody doing a PhD has to do research and has to add something new to the way, the practical way, because it's practice, ethics is practical, the practical way of doing the things slightly better than it was done before, and in a new way. One of the problems that is the main fear of people doing a PhD is that after 4 years and you're about to publish, somebody else has published it. So you have to start from scratch. I hope by choosing very well the topic and making sure that we know what other people are doing around the world regarding ethics, then that will not happen. So we have already several candidates that want to do the PhD in applied ethics, and I hope many more will come because Kenya needs them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Branya. Now that we know the secret to the road to Singapore, maybe we can now put it into practice. And hopefully when we start this PhD, we shall get a roadmap that will take us to Singapore. So thank you very much, Dr. Branya. So now next, I would like to invite the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academics and Student Affairs, Dr. Elizabeth Kashenga, to give her remarks.
Our chief guest, Senior Counsel Fred Ngatia, who also happens to be an alumnus of the Master of Philosophy and Master of Applied Philosophy and Ethics, actually one of our first entrants to that program, so we recognize that as well. Our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Vincent Obutu, the Dean of the school, Dr. Magdalene Dimba, as well as the immediate former Dean, who has joined us and I think is going to be in a panel session later on. My colleagues, faculty members of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, who occupy a special place in our hearts. Our potential students of the doctoral program, those students of the undergraduate program who I see seated here listening keenly, and one day we'll actually be speaking perhaps to the program that they did. Ladies and gentlemen, I see some potential members of the program. Welcome. Welcome to Strathmore University. And then allow me also to begin by congratulating, usually you do this after, by congratulating the team that has brought us here today. Now, Dr. Branya has spoken to some of the things that I would have been speaking to, but allow me to say some of the things that he has said nonetheless. So as you have heard, this PhD in applied ethics that we're launching today occupies a deliberately and carefully defined place within the Strathmore University graduate studies framework. Yeah? Why? Because at the heart of the programs we offer at Strathmore University is what we refer to as a core curriculum. So all the students of Strathmore get to do a couple of a couple of studies or programs in philosophy and ethics. And we usually like to say that, whereas it's true we give you all this technical expertise, etc., what distinguishes Strathmore from other programs is precisely those units. What eventually you students usually rate to us in the exit survey as you exit is that the things you enjoyed the most are precisely those courses. Yeah, some of you I know may be in first year and you're thinking, what? Philosophical anthropology? Not really. But I can assure you that by the time you're finishing, I see some smiles at the back, you will remember this speech, yeah, because you're likely to rate that the things you will remember most are the courses and the discussions that you had in some of these units. Now, I'd like you to take a moment to reflect on the theme, yeah, because I think the theme is very well thought out. Ethics as a moral fabric, person to society, person to society. This doctoral program illustrates how advanced education forms not only scholars, but persons capable of ethical judgment that shapes institutions and public life. So eventually, it's about we, the individuals, we, the persons. So it's first myself as an individual, and ultimately the society. So without being people of ethical judgment, the society cannot be shaped into an ethical society. So I think we've been challenged here by Dr. Branya to think MPH. Yeah, in order for us to get and implement that MPH, it begins with us. Yeah, so it's easy normally to look at the top, yeah, and say different things about the top and what they're doing and what they're not doing. But I think it's also good usually to begin by looking inwards and think about ourselves and see, how am I looking in terms of that MPH? Now, I'd like to reassure you that at Strathmore, graduate education represents advanced intellectual formation, research competence, and eventually leads to academic leadership. So let me prepare those who might be thinking of coming for the program. The journey will be hard, yeah? So I had better warn you, yeah? So usually we begin with coursework and the demands are high, yeah? So it's not a walk in the park, yeah? But it's part of preparing us precisely to become those good formators that, to become those good experts that we're seeking to become through this program. You will be required to demonstrate research competence. Again, it will be hard. So before we graduate you, we will expect you to have published in well-recognized journals at least 3 papers, yeah? Why? Because as you've heard, part of the PhD process is to create knowledge. So in order for us to make an impact in terms of creation of knowledge, it's important for us to demonstrate that through publication, yeah? So that also will be required of us. And then there'll be all these other things that will be required of us, which will precisely help us to prepare for that program. But nevertheless, at the end of that journey, we will look back and we will be grateful for the rigor that has been demanded from us during this period. I can attest to the fact that in the process of the design of the program, a lot of effort has gone to it, yeah? And usually our programs go through various stages of approval, which confirm that the program actually meets the academic rigor demanded of programs at Strathmore University. The program is also approved by the Commission for University Education. You will be glad to know. And if you doubt me, you can go to the website and you will see it there, which is very important as well. The supervisors will work with the students. So whereas it's true the journey is not a walk in the park, you can be sure that you will get the support that it requires. Now, at the doctoral level, what kind of competencies are we looking for? Once you finish, we will expect you to be people who can analyze situations that require ethical considerations. So it's analysis, yeah? So it's the beginning of competency, not the beginning, but we're already anticipating what CBA is supposed to be bringing out, yeah? So not just persons who can, recite the knowledge, but people who can actually analyze and come up with some of the things that are required in order for us to contribute to society. Hopefully, we will have people who can engage our policies and help us to transform ourselves into what it is that this country seeks, yeah, to move to the next level in terms of development but also in terms of having good citizenship. And then ultimately, we're looking forward to ethical leadership. Yes, so people who can make a contribution in society, in the Kenyan society, and people who are ethical. Yeah, and that's why it was a great pleasure when Senior Counsel Fred Gatia signed up for the program. Yeah, why? Because at the beginning we were looking forward to people like him. Yeah, people who are already in leadership to come and sign up for the course, get some skills in applied philosophy and ethics, and then continue contributing to society, but incorporating and integrating some of the competencies that we hope he received from the program. So thank you very much, Senior Counsel, for accepting our invitation to come for this launch of the program. And now it gives me great pleasure to invite our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Vincent Ogutu, to come and make his remarks. Thank you.
Our chief guest, Senior Counsel Fred Ngatia, the members of the Strathmore University Management Board present, especially our Deputy Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs, Dr. Elizabeth Gashenga, who's just spoken to you, the Dean of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Dr. Magdalene Dimba. We're also privileged to have the immediate former Dean, Professor Christine Gishure, welcome. Members of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences and the Management Committee, this is your day. Thank you very much for making this happen. Then there are several deans present, and we welcome you as well. Then the faculty, the admin staff, students, as Dr. Elizabeth said, prospective students. We hope we have several of those here as well. Lots of friends, distinguished guests that I can see here. So ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Strathmore. Today is a big day. We've been building up to this for quite a while. As Dr. Branya said, it's been 16 years since we launched the Masters in Applied Philosophy and Ethics. And this was the next natural progression to it that people have been pushing us to build, and this is the day that it's going to be launched. So it's a wonderful day for us. I was thinking about it and asking myself why it's such a wonderful moment. And I couldn't help but think about the arguments that different professions have. This goes on and on, especially in universities. So the economists will think they rule the world. Then the sociologists say, you know nothing. Then the psychologists will come and say, we are the wise ones, we know what we're doing. Then you have the engineers, we build the world. And even if you look at history and how it's evolved, you know, the great industrial revolution, so the engineers were ruling the world, we build the world. And then you have the political scientists who are trying to reorient the world and reshape it, and the social experiments of communism and Marxism that lead to even world wars. And then you have the economists coming to put everyone together, rebuild the world. Then the psychologists coming and saying, you got it all wrong. The Industrial Revolution was turning people into robots. You didn't pay enough attention to the psychological needs and flourishing of individuals. Then the psychologist starts to rule. And now we have the resurgence of the engineers, especially the computer scientists coming back. And then AI saying we can do everything. So you have this perpetual argument of who rules the roost, who's the king of the heap, who's at the top. And this has been going on for a long time. But in the early days, there was no argument about it. It was quite clear who was on top of the pyramid. So if you go to ancient Greece, so everyone understood, look, philosophy, that's where wisdom resides. If you look at all these fields, they'll teach you some kind of knowledge which maybe has been culled together into some kind of wisdom, and then they'll say, this is what the world needs. But then if you go to the ultimate, the ones who actually study wisdom itself, you know, philosophia, you know, the love of wisdom, then you can't escape from the philosophers. Ultimately, they're the ones who rule the roost. If you disagree with me, then just look at the title of almost any doctorate. It'll start with a doctor of philosophy in whatever else it is, because you epitomize the best in anything when you call it a doctor of philosophies. You've gone to the highest level of wisdom, even in your field. And so when you're studying wisdom itself, there's hardly any argument. And I challenge you to prove me wrong. I've personally experienced that, if I may share that story. I started off thinking economists will be the saviors of the world. I saw the poverty around us, and who's going to save the world? Who's going to save Kenya and Africa? Surely it's the economists. Why? Because most of what we're doing, all the work that we're doing, we're trying to create economic value. And once we have that, you can access anything you want, or so it seemed. And who's going to deliver that? The economists. So the saviors of the world will be economists. So I became an economist, and I finished. Then I realized, wait, the economists don't make the decisions. It's the politicians, the leaders. They're the ones who decide whether we're even going to listen to the economists or not. So much as you may study economics or think you're saving the world, you come to realize they don't call the shots. It's the leaders who call the shots. So then I started wondering, now how can we still change the world, knowing you can't do it as an economist, so you somehow have to influence leaders? What gives leaders that kind of power? And I needed a field that could help me understand that. So I went into organizational behavior, organizational psychology, because they'll try and explain when studying leaders what gives them so much power. Why is it that people follow them and dedicate some of their best energies to implement the visions that these leaders are painting for them? What gives them that power? And what it taught me is that leaders sell meaning. They'll paint this vision, which is so meaningful to people. They'll paint it in such a compelling way. And if they're, in fact, virtuous leaders, the kind of leaders you would trust and believe in, then you'll do anything. You'll dedicate your best energies to follow them, to realize that vision. So they are selling meaning. And then it seemed like, okay, so psychology has finally given me what I'm looking for. And then just when you think you've learned it all, you finally reached the apex, then somebody asks you, and what gives meaning to any of those visions that you're looking at? Like, what is the source of meaning? And psychology can't answer that question. It can't. The only field that can answer it is philosophy. So after all that meandering, trying to save the world and thinking how I can be a part of it, clearly the ultimate answer is in philosophy, and the highest you can go is a doctor in philosophy. And that's why, to cut a long story short, I'm so happy that today we've finally reached the end of that journey, and we're finally launching a program that will take us to the highest level. It's a doctorate. As Dr. Elizabeth has told you, it's not easy, and it's mostly about research. Dr. Branya also mentioned it, creating new knowledge. You might think there's nothing more to be said about the subject. Ethics, applied ethics, we know if everyone was honest, if everyone was transparent, they did what they're supposed to do, the world would be a better place. There's nothing more to be said about it. Let's get on with it and do it. I guess all the questions have been answered. Couldn't be further from the truth. There's so many unanswered questions, because this is applied ethics. It's not just the theory that, okay, we need good people, you need to be a good person, you need to be ethical to make the world a better place. How do you do it? How does that actually work? Why isn't it working? What are the forces that are preventing it from working? Who can answer that in a compelling way that can help us to actually change things and shake things up? You need some pragmatists who understand the philosophy behind it. And that's what the research is going to carry out. So there's so much work to be done, so much to be discovered, so much to be shared and implemented. And we hope that this program will help us to create that. So very happy with the team that's put it together, including the ones from industry. who were part of giving us the input. This is what we think you should be delivering. And the partners who've helped us to shape it, all the hard work that went into it. Kudos to all of you. We really look forward to having it launched in a few minutes' time. But we've brought somebody here who's going to be our keynote speaker today. I really look forward to listening to him, and it's my privilege to introduce him now. So we have with us Senior Counsel Fred Ngatia. He doesn't really need an introduction in this country, but I'll mention a few interesting things about him. If there's somebody in this room who really is a lifelong learner, he embodies that, then it would be Senior Counsel Fred Ngatia. He's been a keen learner throughout. So we start with him getting his Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of Nairobi, 1979. And then he goes on to the Kenya School of Law, gets his postgraduate diploma in law the following year in 1980. He was one of the top 6 students, so again showing how dedicated he was, which allowed him to be selected to work in the Attorney General's office. And 4 years later, he's back at it. So 1984, he gets a Master of Laws from the University of London, from the London School of Economics. But even the great Senior Counsel Fred Ngatia came to his senses and realized law will not be the only one saving the world. There's something missing. And it was a few years of practicing law at the highest level, very many high-profile cases in the country, lots of positions of responsibility. So he had had enough time to test the hypothesis that lawyers will save the world as lawyers. And he realized, I need philosophy. I need to just go to the greatest levels of wisdom that humanity has ever reached and tried to apply and understand what that is like. And so he came to Strathmore. He became our MAPE student. And then he graduated in 2019 with our Masters in Applied Philosophy and Ethics. So he's walked the journey. He's seen what it's like. And we're so grateful to have you here, Senior Counsel, to talk to us about your expectations for this particular degree that we're launching. Maybe even to sign up. I've asked the Dean to have some application forms around. So please join me in welcoming Senior Counsel Fred Ngatia. Karibu sana.
Asante sana, Bwana VC, Deputy VC Academic, the Dean, my former teacher, Dr. Branya, who ended up being the supervisor of my dissertation, the other former teachers, I can see Mwalimu over there, distinguished guests, ladies, habari yenu. Habari yenu tena. Thank you so much for inviting me to this very auspicious occasion. I had prepared some notes, but before I go to the notes, let me say the following few words. One, it was a very warm reception that I received. You have a wonderful team here in Strathmore. And Strathmore, coming to Strathmore is like a homecoming. I was actually looking forward to this. Although I got very little time to prepare the paper, I said it doesn't require much time to prepare something to take back home. So I was actually very happy that you invited me. Let me also tell the aspiring students something that may change whether you sign up or not sign up. And I hope you will sign up. I did MAPE, a very difficult program, took 2 solid years. In the midst of it, I was called by the then Deputy President to go and do a very difficult case. We were in the middle of anthropology, and I realized the inadequacy of technology. You can't go to your phone and tell the Deputy President, I'll call you later. or I'm busy. But I had to find a way of telling him by walking out that, Your Excellency, I'll call you back. He thought I'm in court or something. Finally, I did call him back, and I was able to link up with the then Attorney General, and within a short while, we did the case that we were required to do. But in MAPE, and MAPE only, did I learn so many things that changed my life. Some of you remember that soon after MAPE, and characteristic of me, I thought I could go back to government, and I applied to be the Chief Justice of this country. And I was actually interviewed. And one of the things I brought out in that interview is why Kenya cannot be Singapore, despite us having been at the same level at independence. And those who listened to that interview will remember my telling Kenyans that the biggest problem of this country is the justice criminal process. A very senior person is arrested, the evidence is there, the smoking gun is there. But what the justice system does is to delay the case and delay it forever. So ultimately, when the case is called out, there's not a single witness. And I said, if I were to take over this job, I'll promise Kenyans that such cases will be determined within 4 months. Maybe I rattled the wrong forces, because you then know what happened. But that is not to say that we don't have a fantastic Chief Justice, we do, but there is that requirement that this country does not have, the requirement of having things done correctly. Because you have competent magistrates, competent judges, and competent everybody. But why doesn't this case get going? Why is it the case is nothing more than changing from one share to another share? And then as time goes on, of course, witnesses get tired and they move on. So we cannot go to Singapore, we cannot be like Singapore unless we change and we have meritocracy, number one, honesty, number two, and a very determined approach to public service. Ladies and gentlemen, when I saw the paper that I was to deliver or what I was to share with you, I didn't even know where to start because it's a very broad subject. Person to society. We all know the early stages of life. Those early stages are difficult stages because in those early times, the infant or the young one cannot be able to fend for themselves. Other people have got to take care of that person. And that goes on for quite a bit of time. I'll share the whole paper with you. I would only have brief aspects of it. And then, of course, as the person gets into adulthood, we start now realizing that there is need to go to society. Why is there need to go to society? It's because a human being can never satisfy or fulfill their needs as an individual. Society is actually where we all belong. We cannot realize our potential as individuals, as small islands. We need to go to society. And the society then becomes, so to speak, our ultimate aim as we grow up. We start off the early stages of socialization, schooling, and everything, but man is made for society, and it's indeed in society that we can prosper. So we'll rather, ladies and gentlemen, go straight into society and see what is required of us. Many things are required of us, but we focus on the ethics because that is where we ought to focus. Moral ethics, or the ethics and virtues, that is part of my paper. And then I have dealt with the moral virtues, and this I will share with all the attendees. And I have also referred to the 4 cardinal virtues. You all know about them. And these are the virtues that really ought to be our true north in our day-to-day interactions. But I go to what I perceive to be the most important aspect of this discussion. Despite the virtues, there's that element, that very small word called conscience. Conscience is the inner voice, the one that tells you, without even going to school or going to law school or any other place, the distinction between right and wrong. It can be very developed if you allow it to be developed. But we do know that because of very many temptations, conscience is subdued. How is conscience subdued? It is subdued because you know it is wrong to take a bribe, but it is offered in very tempting ways, and is offered when probably you feel you are a bit down economically. The first time you take a bribe, I'm sure one feels very wrong. You feel some moral depravity. But the second and third time and fourth time becomes a habit. What you are doing is subduing the conscience. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot go far unless we find a way of those temptations being not acceded to by the individual. Because that is the temptation that corrupts the person. Your conscience is now hopelessly subdued, and you cease to be that moral person that the virtues teach you to be. I have dealt with conscience at a great detail in my paper, because to me, it is really what we ought to be looking at. Man can't exist in isolation, that we do know. We go to the society, which is a positive good, and then this society is the society of human beings like you, but how do we interact? We interact if we allow the conscience to be our true north. Allow me to give you 2 or 3 examples of where conscience shows how important it is in our day-to-day living. We all remember the case of Thomas More. He was then a chancellor in England, and we had that gentleman called King Henry VIII. King Henry VIII did many things. Number one, he inherited he inherited the empire from his brother when he was still a relatively young fellow. And then he approached the Pope for a dispensation because he wanted to marry his brother's wife. We all know that. The Pope was gracious enough to give him a dispensation. And then they went on, they couldn't get a boy. And then this character decided, look, there's a book of Leviticus. Yes, the book of Leviticus says you shouldn't see the nakedness of your brother's widow. So he sent word to the Pope and said, look, we did a mistake. I shouldn't have married my brother's wife. I shouldn't have married the widow, and that is why nothing is happening. Give me another dispensation to divorce her. But the Pope had seen, okay, this Randy character is becoming too much. So he said, no, I'm not going to give you another dispensation. So he was deprived of that desire to marry the lady he was seeing at night. And that led to the breakup of England from the mainstream, which was the Catholic faith. All this time, the Chancellor, a very renowned person, kept his peace. He didn't say it is wrong, neither did he say it's right. But the entire populace was looking for a word from Thomas More. And many people nudged him on. Look, I mean, even for comradeship, let's allow the king to marry whoever he wants. And Thomas More kept on saying, my conscience can't allow me to do that which I know is wrong. But all of us are doing it, why not you? And then he would tell them, all of you could, but my conscience does distinguish right from wrong. But what did he get? He was subjected to a trial. The lawyers in this room, please hear me. It's quite unfortunate that even lawyers do succumb to those kingly efforts. And he was convicted, and he was executed. That shows a strong, dominant view of what conscience is. But it also shows you that there is a price you may pay. But it's better to pay that price than to be part of the crowd. Another example I thought about is the opposite of Thomas More. And this is a gentleman who was a general during Hitler's reign. Hitler executed millions of Jews. He couldn't have done that without, of course, the assistance of his generals. And all of you, ladies and gentlemen, are fully aware of what he perceived to be the final solution. And people were saying, yes, this is the final solution. We've got to get rid of these Jews. One of the characters who was notorious is called Eichmann. And the fall of Hitler, this character managed to simply disappear from the world. Went to Argentina, took a new name, and became like any other character. But the Israeli intelligence, knowing the evil that Eichmann had done, had sworn that there will never be peace until they get hold of this character. They looked for Eichmann everywhere, maybe even in the Mediterranean Sea, because that would have been the easiest place to go to. But they finally tracked him in Argentina in 1961. You can imagine from the end of the Second World War, 1945 to 1961. Courtesy of the Israeli intelligence, they never gave up. And when he was arrested, the Israeli government said Eichmann will not go to Nuremberg war trials, which were being held in Germany, but he'll be taken to Jerusalem for trial. And true enough, he stood trial in Jerusalem. I learned this when I was doing MAPE, not when I was doing law. And the book was referred to us by a lady called Hannah Arendt. And all of you, please make a note of it, Hannah Arendt, or a name like that. There are even movies that you'll be able to download for those who prefer the pictorial part of it. And this character stood trial in Jerusalem. Witnesses were testified, and the truth about it is that he did it like a laboratory assistant would. A whole trainload of kids will come, and you'll be able to segregate them by age and order how they'll be taken for extermination. And he'll do this so systematically. So when this lady Arendt went to Jerusalem to witness the trial, she was hoping to see a very evil character. But what she found is a very meek character. Very meek, very ordinary. And the trial went on. What we learn from this is that this character's conscience had been completely subdued, because actually what he said is, his conscience would have been affected if he refused to obey the commands to exterminate the Jews. The exact opposite of what you'd expect. And that is the most graphic example of what it means, that what we need to do to always ensure that our conscience is following the true law. Ladies and gentlemen, let me also share with you maybe one or two other things, my views about the program that is about to be unveiled. If I was maybe much younger, I would have signed for it even 2 months ago. But even at my station in life, I'll positively think about it. Dr. Branya supervised my dissertation. In this university, and like many other universities, you'll be pushed to actually venture into areas that are not common. Ladies and gentlemen, particularly the students, I did a dissertation on euthanasia. Euthanasia may appear a very, very far off subject. It is not. Our doctors practice euthanasia. My research area was limited to Nairobi. I did find doctors through the questionnaires who practice euthanasia, because it is becoming more or less, Kenya is becoming more or less a recipient of whatever is happening in the Western democracies. The Western democracies have de-Christianized their way of life. We are far from them. Despite that, I did find out that particularly those patients who are perceived to be terminal, euthanasia is being practiced. Any student who would wish to pursue that line, I was actually encouraged by the external examiner to consider doing a PhD study and have that as my research paper. It's a very ripe area because you have all the literature available. How do you justify euthanasia? In America, it's justified on the basis of liberty. Liberty, as we all know, is one of those liberal principles that many countries have in their constitution. But is there a liberty to end life? Would be the question that students in ethics would ask. Does life belong to you, so that, like a phone, so that you can decide to dispose of it or not dispose of it? Others justify it on the basis of privacy, that you do not want to be attended to, and because you are now in more or less a helpless state, you can end life. And life to us, I hope, must mean a little bit more than a little pain, a little discomfort. We know Christ suffered and endured that suffering to the very end. So how one who is suffering from a disease decides, now it is too late for me, I wish to terminate my life. Those are the things, troubling questions that will be very, very interesting for PhD students. Finally, what do I bring to you about my practice? We are in a very poor state, and I say what you all know. We are in a poor state because instead of students of ethics, students in philosophy taking leadership positions, those positions are reserved for anybody else other than yourselves. And that reminds me about Chinua Achebe. We all know about Chinua Achebe. He gave a lecture when I was a student at LSC. BBC had a very good program, and it was a very popular program. And Chinua Achebe was asked, Chinua Achebe, what is wrong with Africa? Let's put it in context. Those were the days that Shehu Shagari had taken over in Nigeria. Nigerians routinely were found in suitcases of money at Heathrow Airport. Suitcases. I mean, Kenyans are just nowhere near there. I know a few of my classmates, very young ladies, barely 24, driving the latest Mercedes, and she'll tell you, look, my cousin is a general. He's now in the tender of selling petroleum, and, So, Chinua Achebe, what is the matter with Africa? No, with Nigeria. But he decided to answer it in a more continental way. He said the problem in Nigeria is experienced in all African countries. And being an intellectual, much bigger than I am, he decided to use soccer. At that time, Liverpool used to be the best in Europe. I was a Liverpool fan. You may remember John Barnes and all those characters. And we traveled Europe, and we beat Juventus and all those other teams. We were a bit rowdy, but so that is what is expected. He said, consider Africa and Europe. The first 11 in Europe, like in Liverpool, will be the best players that team has. You don't compromise. The goalkeeper is Grobela because he's the best. And you don't say no because Grobela is white, he's from South Africa, we have somebody from Spain or any other country. The best is the one who becomes a goalkeeper. If that were to be in Africa, he'll be put aside. Why? Because he's Igbo, or he's from the north, or he's from wherever. So you consider the second candidate. You consider the third, you consider the fourth. If it was in Kenya, you now go, no. Kikuyu too many. Luo too many. What and what. And you end up, not that they should get it, but you end up with the 6th or 7th in the queue. And those 6th or 7th or even 10th are the ones to play against the first 11 of Europe. Is that possible? That is the problem that we have in our public service. Ladies and gentlemen, with those remarks, I once again thank you for inviting me, and I wish you the very best, and may the graduates of this program take over leadership positions in our own lifetime. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senior Counsel. I have asked for his permission to have one question from the audience. If there are any questions from the audience or based on what we've had Senior Counsel speak. So thank you. My ushers.
Thank you, Senior Counsel. When you speak of Africa, I get really interested. And I thank you for using the analogy of a football team that competes against an even superior football team. And yes, we need meritocracy. I remember once someone telling us our disease is nepotism. And if we throw it away, Africa is lost. That being as it is, I'm thinking, why are we like that? Why are we so scared of the other? I don't know if I'm asking a high question. Maybe I should ask God, but now that you're here and you've been interacting and you're senior, perhaps you can give us a glimpse so that we catch ourselves, at least it would help me, before we begin looking for the nephew and the niece to fill these places. What is the insecurity? Thank you.
Thank you, Senior Counsel, for the beautiful presentation. I have one question. When we look in Africa, and particularly in Kenya, we see we have a challenge in leadership. And you have emphasized on the importance of the conscience. Why do we have challenges in our leadership and in connection with their development? Does it mean our leaders do not have good conscience? What is lacking? Because conscience, we believe, is inborn, is intrinsic, and every one of us is conscious. So if each one of us is conscious, what is lacking? Maybe you can expound a little bit on the formation of the conscience. Thank you.
I think we can answer those two questions in the interest of time. So we can take those two.
If you could allow me, let me start off with Father. Do we have leaders? Sometimes I wonder. Let's look at, and we are not here to talk names or anything. Let's look at members of parliament, because that is the level that represents each one of us. You cannot be a member of parliament unless you have a budget minimum 40 million. And that is the budget you'll use to do everything to corrupt the voters. So are you a leader when you become a mheshimiwa? You only need to look at the process and answer the question. That is not a leader, that's a businessman. Because what we have put in National Assembly is somebody to recoup what he spent. And I've talked and I've heard some of these characters talk. Yes, they say, look, we all know we ought to be doing this and this. But Ngati, you are being utopian. You can't get these characters to come to a campaign rally unless you pay them. There is now an attendance fee. The attendance fee ranges from 500 to 1,000. You do that for a year, you can see how much you have spent. So they have just invested money like an investor would invest by buying a tractor. So in my very humble view, you only need to look at it, go downwards and upwards, and you see actually the word leadership and the word intrinsic become quite separate. Because the leadership, as I know, would be the leadership that when you become a member of parliament, like it used to happen, and does happen in some countries, it is actually a service you are going to give. But is there any service that these characters give? Just look at the recent example from one of the senior counsel, Ahmed Nasir, who actually said in his part of Kenya, Northeastern, despite CDF being released by the Exchequer every year, not a single member of parliament could stand up and say, I use CDF to construct this primary school. But does anybody ask? No. Why? Because it's better not to ask. And you get more by not asking. Second question, the insecurity. Why do we look for nieces and nephews? Madam, I don't even think we look for nieces and nephews. We are a little bit more advanced. We are so advanced, we have left the family. Because you look at the family, you may find a cousin like Ngatia who doesn't want to go that way, and the DVC doesn't want to go that way. So we look for our buddies even outside. We do this even outside our community. So the insecurity is not really an insecurity, but you look for people who are like-minded because it is a feasting game. It's a banquet that you are going to, to unleash. It's a banquet where you now use public funds for your private gain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senior Counsel. We would like to appreciate you, so I'd like to ask Dr. Ogutu to come and help us appreciate. We can just come here to the front of the podium. the center. Yes. Yes. So as we, that was one of the, most interesting approaches that I have seen, from person to society, well thought out, very academic, but as well as having a practical element. So if you didn't know, we are sitting in the Sir Thomas More building. So those of us who had never heard of the history of Sir Thomas More, now Mr. Ngatia has helped us understand that a little bit. Let us appreciate him with a big round of applause. So for our second discussion, still about ethics as a moral fabric of society, we would like to invite a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen, or perhaps a lady and gentleman, who have experiences from various sectors, who will come and speak to us on this issue. To lead this panel, I will invite Dr. Abogast Akidiva to come and help us. And perhaps will he invite his panelists, or should I? Yes. So our first panelist is the immediate former Dean of the School of Humanities, Professor Christine Gishure. Welcome. Yes. And then as well, we have Father Jude Karuhanga, who I don't want to say he's the immediate former chaplain, because perhaps now we are two down, but he is also an ethics enthusiast with a lot of experience, and has spoken to us many times. We also have one more panelist, Engineer Julia Sogalo, who has stepped out for 1 second, but will be back within the next 2 seconds as we start this section. So let us welcome our panel. And our final panelist, Engineer Julia Sogalo. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Senior Counsel, thank you for taking us back to literature, because that is the nuggets. I was chatting with PLO, and it's an amazing experience in the sense that when you go to his office, desk is full of literature books. So we looked at Darkness at Noon. He went to The Problem with Nigeria and so on. Thank you. It also reminds me de Graft Mund, which says that we are, so I am. But the philosophers will tell us, Descartes said something else. I think, I think, and therefore I am. So thank you. Without much ado, we are now going to have these distinguished colleagues to look at today's topic through lenses. Ethics as the moral fabric, person to society. And this is going to move us from family, the formative years, institutions, and then those public choices and public spaces to operate. So I'd like to invite our first panelist. We will pose some questions so that we get rid of the monotony in terms of speech. So they will start with Father Jude, Reverend Father Dr. Jude Anga, and his area that he's going to on is universal moral compass. issue of shared values, which the keynote, our keynote speaker addressed. What makes a moral claim universal in a plural society, and how do we defend it without coercion?
Thank you. I will start with a brief story as a preface to my answer. I just remembered this. So yesterday I was coming out of a class, Faith and Reason. I teach Faith and Reason to some students. And so we discussed religion and faith. And as I was stepping out of the class, one of the students, she's Hindu. I could hear her whispering to her companion, we were forced to do this course. So of course, I walked away very quickly before they could ask me anything. But it reminded me that we live in as we have been told, we live in a pluralistic society where it's very hard to tell people or to find agreement on matters that seem to be up in the air, not very established, like ethical principles. So I think my answer would be that we need to appeal to the reason of people. I think we need to appeal to the reason of people and give them truth and know how to present that in a good way. And to pick on something that was mentioned by the senior counsel, the conscience as well. Everyone has a conscience. Everyone has a thirst for truth. So if we go there, if we address that, then we can find some common agreement on the universal laws and so on.
You talk of conscience, and even when you're talking about that, I remembered what St. Paul says, some people, their conscience has been singed. So you are going to conscience. The issue of a moral compass. So without this moral compass, relativism, how then should we deal with that?
Yeah,
because then there are all these competing perspectives, competing choices. And therefore, there's the tendency to say it all depends.
Relativism is, I think, one of the diseases that we have to try and address, and especially in the university, because many people, unfortunately, have believed this idea that truth is relative. It depends on the person, on the culture, on their upbringing, that there is a truth for Africans, a truth for Kenyans, a truth for Ugandans, and so on and so forth. So I still think that the answer is to go to the reason of people. Everyone has a reason and a desire for truth and a capacity for truth. So if we appeal to that, if we know how to speak to their minds, to present the truth in an attractive way, I think that people could eventually come round. Of course, it's not the only approach, because we don't only have a mind, we have other parts of us. But I think it's a good beginning to go to the mind. And that's what I think we're here to do in the university, in programs like this one.
Mm-hmm. So help us to understand moral compass. I remember was it geography? I'll not say astronomy. A compass gives direction. So how do you apply this? Help us understand the idea of a moral compass in relation to what you're saying, and then give us perhaps some very practical, real life situations where then we can apply this moral compass notion.
Yeah, so the moral compass, I would start with, there is a law, an eternal law, and the law is what determines the nature of something. So a compass, if a compass is telling you where north is and where east and west and south are, then the nature of a person as well brings with it an understanding of what is good for that person, what is not good for that person. And that's what the natural law says. Now, we know the natural law, we apply it in practice through the conscience. So we come into contact with the law, with all laws really, in the most proximate way through the conscience. Now, you could address this from the point of view of lecturers who are teaching students, or you could address it from the point of view of students who are learning and having their consciences formed. So in both cases, perhaps there are differences in the approaches you may take, but the lecturer has to let people know that there is such a thing as a law, a moral law that is objective and valid for everyone. and that law comes down to very practical consequences in daily life, like case of euthanasia, or decisions you have to make on whether or not to take a bribe when you're in town. So the conscience is there. Again, it's the conscience, I think, that we have to aim at to shape the consciences of people. I'll say something from the founder of Opus Dei, Saint Jose Maria Escrivá, who is like a patron for this university. So he was interviewed in the 1960s, late 1960s, and asked about universities. And he was asked, what is the role of the university in society? And he said, a university is meant to shape human beings and in that way contribute towards transforming society. And we shape human beings by giving them truth, but by respecting their freedom as well. So in the process of shaping the consciences, I think we have to take note of maybe the first thing that came up, the pluralistic society, understand that people may not take things immediately, but we have to find a way. There's no other way. We have to find a way to give them the truth, to tell them euthanasia is bad, to tell them abortion is bad, even though it may be unpopular, politically incorrect.
Now, then how do we hold firm moral standards while still protecting what I may call genuine cultural dialogue? We live in a culture, we live among people, and we have imbibed values, we've gone through processes. So how do we do that and still have the freedom of conscience, if at all there's anything like freedom of conscience? Because from what you're saying, it's like the straight and narrow.
That's a broad one. I would still think that the answer is formation, is to give truth. So Jesus Christ famously said that the truth will set you free. I think those words are very, very profound. So even in a society in which, because of differences in culture, in upbringing and so on, people tend to go separate ways. And now, unfortunately, we have this belief that certain ideas belong to a certain ethnic group, that certain ideas belong to the West, they don't belong to Africa, they don't belong to... I think that brings a problem, but still the answer, the way to resolve it is to try and go back to the truth that saves, to try and form people again, to speak to them, They will respond sooner or later, I think.
You keep on going back to truth. What is truth?
Yeah, that's a question that someone once asked and walked away before he got an answer. Truth has to do with correspondence to reality. So what I have in my mind should correspond to the reality on the ground and should correspond to something outside me, something objective. That's why we can speak of objective truth. So when we speak of the law as well, the eternal law, it is outside me. So I have to correspond to it. I may be far from the truth, which means I need to come to the truth. It's not the truth that bends towards me, but I bend towards the truth. And I have to discover the truth.
There are students in the auditorium. Perhaps give us an example that may make that very real. Because for them, things like love, all those things, they are so abstract, so far removed from reality. Yeah. So for the students, what would be truth in their circumstances in Strathmore?
Well, truth is very broad, but to take a very easy example that I guess we all agree with, there is a law called gravity, and that law exists whether I know it or not, whether I like it or not, whether I feel like it or not.
Yeah, jumping from a building,
so
you'll break your bones.
if I jump from a building, it doesn't matter whether I believe in gravity or not, because gravity believes in me, and I will fall down. So the fact is, the objective truth is that there is gravity, there is an attraction between bodies, and it has a certain acceleration, and I will fall, I'll hit the ground at a certain speed. So there are things that are objective that I cannot change, that are just given to me, and that somehow restricts my freedom, but it doesn't take away my freedom. It doesn't restrict, actually, it aligns my freedom, it guides my freedom. So, but there are truths in everywhere, in matters of religion as well. This is one of the hard questions to ask. is there such a thing as objective truth in matters of religion? Can you say this religion is true and that religion is false? Or can they all be true at the same time, even though they're contradicting each other, even though they're saying quite opposed things? But it's a question that has to be addressed.
Thank you very much. My phone go, that was the timer. So I think what you're telling us is that, so in everything, do to others what you'd like have them to do to you. This is in Matthew 7:12, because you alluded to Christ. So I don't know if that brings us closer to that moral compass. I'm not...
Yes, well, do everything, do as you would have others do unto you is one of the ways of speaking of the natural law. Or do good and avoid evil. That's another basic principle that you could say is part of the natural law. So it's articulated at different levels. The the universal and down to very practical things.
Thank you. Thank you very much for helping us understand or introducing us to this idea of moral reference points that are bigger than the self, standards that will help us to judge how we interact with other people, how they'll impact our habits, our choices, and so on. This reminds me, John Reed, who says, sow an idea, reap an act, sow an act, reap a habit, sow a habit, reap a character, sow a character, reap a destiny. So thank you very much. Now we turn to Professor Gishure. We've been talking about formation virtues. And again, out in the skies, so remote, far away. But help us understand, walk us through the idea of virtues. With reference to how does a private person concretely become a public, get into that public space where you are talking about formation. So it's from person to society, and you're talking of virtues.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? I tend to speak slow. Okay, virtue. First of all, before we talk about virtue, we need to understand that they are good habits. Virtues are good habits, forming good habits. Good habits are formed by practicing one thing and another and another. So just as I love children start walking, first of all, you see them crawling, then one day they stand up and they raise one leg, and the mother encourages, come on, yes, come, come, come. And then they fall and they stand again, and eventually those legs walking one after the other, they learn to walk. Similarly, virtue is good habits. If I practice a good habit today, by good habits, talking about those dispositions which are agreeable, first of all, there are some which are natural, those we don't have to do anything about. The others which we form. Let's take the case of telling the truth. Talking about the truth, what is truth? When a child steals from her mother 5 shillings today to buy sweets,
sugar.
Or sugar, one day and another day and another, she becomes a sugar thief. Has formed a negative habit of stealing, of small things. But if we bring that with the sugar, very soon, he will steal something else, and he'll get away with it. And later on, he'll steal something bigger, and the next time they will steal from the neighbor. And when they get into the bus, they will not pay the fare unless the conductor asks them manyanga, and if they can get away with it, they will go without paying. deceiving.
Yes. So
That person has formed a negative habit.
okay.
The virtue would be forming the other habit, which is not to take without permission, and not take that what is not yours. To understand that's wrong.
Okay. So in this discussion, I overheard that there's something called the golden mean in public life. So kindly pick perhaps one virtue, justice, temperaments, or practical wisdom, which are the idea of avoiding extremes. How could you make that very real for us non-philosophers?
Well, first of all, the question of golden mean is what do we call the golden mean? The golden mean was coined to harmonize what people from different philosophical backgrounds and even religions would all agree upon as this is right. That is a golden mean. We can all agree on this. That's one. So golden mean ethics means that. But there's another, so that's a golden mean. But there's another thing which we shouldn't confuse with golden mean, which is the mean in virtue, which is something different.
Help us.
The golden mean is one thing, and the mean in virtue is something different. The golden mean, as I was saying, are those, what I would say, good habits, which, or what we call virtues, which irrespective of the philosophical background you have or the religions you have, you would say they are wrong, like stealing, killing, I don't know. I don't want to name all of them, but you know the others which follow. Generally, there are people who deny that even. So even the golden mean is now being used to be unethical, by the way. So we won't go there because it's complicated. So that's the golden mean. For instance, the 10 Commandments, quite a number of laws from Buddha, number of laws from Hinduism, several laws from Islam, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism would agree on a certain number of things. That will be the golden mean. Now, the mean in virtue, which is something different, is that according to the philosophical tradition of Aristotle and others, is that virtue is when there's no either extreme, which is not a virtue, or defect. Let us take the courage. You all admire courageous people, but if a student who is very courageous went with his nose to the examination room and he's caught, because he'll be caught, he'll be suspended, not only suspended, perhaps he'll be expelled from the university. Okay. Now, the other extreme is a student who is so, doesn't even study too much, perhaps, because he studied yesterday and then a week ago, but comes to examination without any preparation. He's courageous with what, okay, maybe that's not a very good example, but he comes without proper preparation. That is also not courage, thinking he knows. So that's one thing. Then truth, let us take truth, for instance. To tell the truth, in this case, without investigating truth itself, which is complex, let's just say, where were you? The prudent student who doesn't want to, okay, who did this? You can be the one, have the one who accuses the person who did it, or the other who will keep quiet. Okay? Right? So where is the virtue here? Why did the one who kept quiet keep quiet? Perhaps not to betray the neighbor, not whatever it is. Eh? So in both cases, we have extremes. Right? Take a soldier or a, who goes to fight enemies alone, where he's being extreme. In other words, he knows he cannot win. Okay? The opposite is the one who runs away. So what is the mean? The mean is to calculate the possibility of, okay, being in the short side or being in the extreme.
Okay.
That is the mean.
And now that example of a soldier, I remember reading the mighty men of valor, David's mighty men of valor, and one of them or two of them would go as an individual, and we read that they slaughtered many people. So I think what you're telling us, my clock went off, is some, Aristotle said, is a state concerned with choice, lying in a mean. So the idea that we should not
the right proportion.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give one more example.
Very briefly, Professor.
Between, let's say in the case of food, between, overeating and undereating. The one who does not know when it is enough. Okay? The one who knows when it's enough is the one who is the mean.
Thank
the
you.
one who is actually fasting or rather suffering from malnutrition because of refusal to eat is not. And the one who is overweight because of overeating is not in the mean.
Thank you.
So now.
Yeah, thank you. I was a little bit, Professor, long way, many in another institution. So, and she was my senior, she's still my senior. So I allowed her a little bit more. My clock went off, but it's okay to provoke discussion. So we've come from listening to Father Jude, then you've come to the idea of the golden mean. Now, we may need to have these mics. Okay. Institutional ethics. And this has already been alluded to. Person to society. The keynote, we were told of the political players and how each one of us, perhaps we decide to turn a blind eye or to keep quiet when you know that some corrupt deal is afoot. So, engineer, we were told you are the ones who construct, you are the ones who design. So how would we then come up with perhaps the notion of a hybrid system? Abstract ideas, how then do we apply them in?
Yeah, so thank you. I think it's very clear that generally speaking in Africa, we have had some ethics, okay? They are called different names. In fact, many people feel, as Africans, we are very ethical. But one of the biggest challenges that we face is that in Africa, we seem to have a lot of corruption. Our institution seems to be very weak. And it shows that there is something that is missing, the connection between our personal ethics and the ethics that we display in our institutions. So what I would say is that we need to look at the way we are educating our children, okay? What are we teaching in schools? Are we able to put across what is good ethics in terms of education? In terms of legislation, are we having the right laws? And then in our own institutions, are we ensuring that we have the right guidelines for each person, such that if you do something wrong, it is clear what the punishments are? Because sometimes it is by having this sort of weak rules around, or of turning a blind eye to something that somebody has done, that encourages us maybe to do the wrong things knowing that there are no consequences, okay? So we have to be a bit tougher.
Okay. You seem to be talking about some pillars from what I can gather. Education is one, then you've talked about the legal system. Would there be another pillar on which this society will help, would help us to go to Singapore?
Yes, we need, of course, we need to have very clear ethics, okay? I mean, ethics has to be clear. And then
it's there. So you've talked
so
of
it's there,
education,
yes, okay.
you've talked of the law.
Yes,
What are the
institutions. In other words,
institutions?
we have to have the right rules within the institution so that we can apply. And we have consequences for not living by those, by the ethics. Because with ethics, once people have choices and there are no consequences, then the tendency to do the wrong things is very strong.
I remember what Professor said. She quoted all these religions, and therefore that is the law, the guidelines, the rules. Many of us have imbibed these laws and rules, and yet we do not live by them. So there is one thing and living. How does that mismatch? Because that in Kenya, senior counsel will tell you we are not, we don't need an extra law. Not at all. We have more than enough legislation. So where is the gap? How can we bridge that? Having the law, having the education, and yet we still fall and fail.
I would say that it's the implementation. That the law is good, the law is written, is good, but when it comes to implementation, we become a bit weak, okay? I mean, one example is that, for example, in China, if you're in the public office and you are caught stealing, the consequences are dire. You know you'll probably die, okay? In Kenya, you are a chief executive, and corruption is found and it can be traced to you personally, you know you will still survive. There are no serious consequences for stealing, okay, for being corrupt. So that's why I'm saying that our institutions are weak. The law is there, okay, saying if you are caught in corruption, there should be consequences. But here, the cost, I mean, you can actually get away with it, okay?
Yeah, I heard that one of a former governor, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission found him culpable, but the office of the ODPP then got into some kind of discussion away from the EACC. Yes. So enforcement issues. So the father of constitutionalism, or the American Constitution, this is one of the people who wrote the American Constitution. He said, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. This is James Madison. So as we wind up, we've gone beyond our time. Which lever, because you've all been talking about levers, pillars, would be necessary to move us towards our journey to Singapore from the three angles? And ignoring the two, what are the consequences? Each one of you has a particular lens that you've looked at this morning. So I start with you, Father Jude. Which one do you think is the most important? Can we choose?
I don't think we should compare them to see which one is most important. They're all important. And I think we should focus on all three. I wish we had a way of getting ethics into every classroom, or having professors, but maybe this program that we're launching today is a good start in that direction. But I think that's a good step towards helping things. I don't know if we'll get to Singapore, but
okay.
It's a good way.
Thank you. Professor Gichuru, your part in short.
I don't know whether I'm going to answer your question, but there's something I want to say.
Go ahead.
It's that we shouldn't confuse ethics and law. Mm-hmm. And here we are doing that. Ethics is not about the various formulations, how to, to apply them. It's not about liabilities. It's not about judgments of criminals, acts. It is also that ethics is before that. So that laws, not be proper laws, should be ethical laws. So in other words, ethics judges law. Not the other way around.
Professor is taking us into philosophy 101. Thank you.
Ethics, and I hope that's the program. It's what the program is about forming people to be convinced that they need to form good habits.
Conviction. So it boils
then at the level of applied ethics, you have to go deep into various ways of looking at certain actions and how they can be judged and why they should be judged in this particular way.
Thank you. Engineer Ogola.
Yeah, okay. For me, one of the challenges that we have and which we have to address is within our own institutions. Okay, that within the institutions, whatever laws we have there, the implementation has to be done right. I'm in a group that are constantly discussing this issue, especially among us Africans. And some guys believe that the issue is that African IQ is too low. Okay, that is why we have laws which we don't implement. We don't care. We do all sorts of things in the bad way. Okay, so I think the
engineer parting short, because Professor has said about it's not about laws. So you're parting short. I'm not guiding you.
No, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, for me, the issue is we have to look at our institutions and see how we can incorporate there the ethical laws, ethical laws and rules and implement them. Okay, because otherwise we are just talking, and the way we have always been talking, and nothing has changed.
Okay, a talk shop. Oh my goodness, it was a panelist, so I hope it's not a talk shop. So thank you very much. Before I let us go, I'll not remain on stage. Perhaps one or two questions from the audience. We are running late in terms of time. So just one or two, thank you very much. One or two questions. And as you do so, perhaps direct it to a particular speaker, and then the speaker will have 30 seconds to respond. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, the MC. My question is directed to Father Jude. And Father Jude, I want to say, even among the panelists, you've done very well, all of you. That has come very clearly. My question goes to you. And I remember talking about the truth. You have touched on the truth. I think you can hear me, right? So you have touched on the truth. And you have defined the truth as the correspondence of... You have defined the truth as the correspondence of the mind and the reality. You have even gone further to say what Jesus Christ taught about the truth. You have even quoted Josemaria Escriva. And now, I understand that we have students here. We want to see what ethics is doing to them in their generation. You know, when it comes even to matters to do with the artificial intelligence, it is here with them. You know, the world is turning digital. You know, we are developing what we are calling digital communities. We are getting somehow rid of the famous physical communities in Africa. And they're asking, how can these ethics help them to make decisions in the world of artificial intelligence?
Thank you. AI.
Big question, and we're all still discovering what to do. It looks like we get out of hand, but I think for now we can still, because artificial intelligence is very dependent on us. So we define what is truth. We tell it what to provide as an answer, as a correct answer. So I think at that stage we can still do something. Now in future, I don't know what will happen. We can only hope that people will analytical sense, a capacity to not value what they get from some artificial intelligence tool, but go deeper.
Yeah, I watched a post saying that the universities are no more. because AI is taking over or has already taken over. So this is that ethical question that is being posed here. So food for thought. Any other last question?
Yes.
Last one.
Yeah. Thank you very much to our panelists. That was a really rich discussion. My name is Bridge Mwangi. My question is directed to Engineer Ogalo. On a very personal level, we talk about implementation, and to be honest, it seems that the system rewards those who, you know, like if you're corrupt in some way, you're able to get into leadership. So on a very personal level, you as a person, what would make you do the right thing?
Engineer, careful, personal level.
In fact, I think my fellow panelists here alluded to that question. In fact, she said that you need to have conviction in what guides your life. You need to have a moral code, okay? Old people will tell you, if you behave in a certain way when you are young and you get away with it, those same things will catch up with you later. And that is, to me, that is what ethics is all about. It's a question of having a moral code. You get an opportunity to bribe or to make some money, you leave it. The senior counsel here talked about Thomas More. Okay? He had a chance to save his life, but he had certain convictions that he believed should guide his life, even at the cost of his life. And he lost it, okay? Because of his conscience. So if you form your conscience properly, it will guide you on what you can do and what you cannot do. If you focus on short-term gain, yes, you will get those short-term gains, but in the long run, it will catch up with you.
Thank you.
Ask the oldest man next to you.
Thank you. Issues of conscience, we remember Socrates. He had an opportunity to flee, he had an opportunity to recant, but he chose to drink the hemlock. So I don't know if this is an invitation to all of us to be ready to drink the hemlock. I hand it back to... So I'd like us to give a rousing a round of applause to the panelists for provoking us into thinking. Thank you very much, Father Jude, Professor Gishure, and Engineer Ogola, for this very wonderful session. I've learned a lot, and I'm greatly indebted to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, sorry, our microphones. Thank you very much to our panelists. We'd like to appreciate them. So Dr. Gashenga, would you please come and help us appreciate our panelists? So we can just start with Engineer Ogalo, sorry, Ogalo. Yes, just stand. And Dr. Gashenga, you can come to the center for the picture. At the front, yes. So asante sana. And then now, yes, and then Professor Gishure. Father Jude. And lastly, our very capable moderator, who was already leaving, Dr. Akidiva. Asante sana. Thank you very much to all of our panelists. The discussion has really opened up our thoughts, and in fact, it's left me with more questions than answers. So I hope when you receive an invitation from me to come and speak in my class, you shall you shall accept it graciously. And now we have come to the time in our program where we are coming to do the work we had come here to do, to launch the program. And so to help us launch the program, I will ask our chief guest, Mr. Ngatia, please come and help us, together with the Vice Chancellor, Dr. Ogutu, our Deputy Vice Chancellor Academics, Dr. Gashenga, and Dr. Dimba, Dean of School of Humanities, to come and help us launch this program. Again, like we said, this is a and Dr. Branya as well. Dr. Branya is feeling a little bit shy, but in terms of meritocracy, you know, he's the one who has done all the work. So we can come here as we prepare for the countdown to launch the program. Yes. Yes. You can come in. Yes. So. So our team at the back, are we ready? Is everyone on here ready to launch our program? Yes? So in 5,
congratulations, celebration. Congrats to everyone that you're in love with. Congratulations and jubilation. I want the world to know how happy as can be. Who would believe that I will be happy and contented? I used to think that happiness had it been waiting. But that was in the bad old days before I met you. When I let you walk into my heart. Congratulations and celebration. When I tell everyone that you're in love with me. Congratulations and jubilation. I want the world to know how happy as can be.
thank you very much.
Congratulations and celebration.
We'll have thanks, but before the thanks, we'll ask for us to take a picture here with our program launchers. Yes. On both sides.
Sandra, come on.
So thank you very much to Dr. Kentaro to give us a vote of thanks. Yes.
The moment has come. It has happened. Before even I begin, dear distinguished guest, Senior Counsel, VC, Dean, DVC, and everybody else, our panelists, thank you so much. We highly appreciate your taking your time to do this. We hope for the best, and we're looking forward. We know this is going to take us far. This has been necessary. We are really, really psyched, shall I say, because it's a good thing. It's a great thing. And as our panelists have been discussing here, and if I may quote our professor as well, it's not about rules. Ethics is not about rules. It is not. It's like the moral fabric that we require in society. And that is what we have come here to kind of begin pushing, okay, to make that change in society, bit by bit, doing what we can with what we have. Thank you so much for enabling this. Thank you.
And with that, we have come to the end of the program. Just a little announcement or two announcements. The program starts in May, so applications start from today. So anybody who is interested, Jeremiah is there and he can guide us on what we will need to apply. And in May, we shall have the first classes. We hope to see a few of you in the classrooms. So asanteni sana for coming. As on our way out, we'll take a group picture just to commemorate the launch of this program, just outside this Sir Thomas More building. Thank you again. Thank you for supporting us. We really enjoyed our time here with you. Have a lovely day.
Only fooling myself thinking love me. But since you might said you wouldn't live without me, that round about me. Congratulations and celebrations when I tell everyone that you're in love with me. Congratulations and jubilation. I want the world to know how happy as can be. Only how happy as can be. Congratulations and celebration when I tell everyone.